Hey everybody, Dave here. Today we are going to use Blue Prism 6.10.1 to automate rpachallenge.com. You've probably seen people use rpachallenge.com before, and I would say that if you haven't done this before, I encourage you to try it. Today was the first time I've really tried to automate rpachallenge.com. I'll show you what I did. I had to come up with a unique way to solve how to find the text fields in Blue Prism because Blue Prism out of the box doesn't come with a way to anchor text fields to their labels. I think you'll see after this video that that is a shortcoming of Blue Prism. It's slightly embarrassing, and personally I think Blue Prism needs to implement something to give us a way to anchor like that. And it's been in UiPath Automation Anywhere for a while now, and I think it's about time Blue Prism adds that too. But hey, you know what? No tool is perfect. That's fine, but we can still poke fun of it anyways. So I am gonna go through and build everything. I'm going to build objects and the process. I'm going to put exception handling in. We'll get data from Excel. We'll do quite a few things and use work queues and stuff like that. So I'm going to try to keep everything on the camera and record all the things that I do, which means this is going to be a bit longer of a video. But if you are interested in how to build an automation in Blue Prism end to end, I'm going to try to include a lot of the things that I do for actual production processes. As opposed to some of the stuff I've done in previous videos, I usually don't make it very robust. I just do just enough to show the concept. But in this, for the most part, I'm going to try to build something that I would be okay putting into production. I'm not going to worry about everything, things like notifications and excessive exception handling, which I've done before, things like making an automation be able to run for hours on its own, even when it's having problems with applications, and periodically notifying users and doing a fair amount of clear logging and that kind of stuff. I'm just going to leave out of the video because it's just not necessary in this case. And even if you were going to automate this for production, you might not need all that extra stuff anyways, because it's kind of a simple thing. Let's get started. I'm just going to free flow talk while I'm making this, and I'm going to think through it. I have done this a little bit earlier, but I'm not going to be building it exactly the same way. And I'm just going to do it entirely kind of from scratch right now. If I make any mistakes, I'll try to make it clear what things I went back and changed and stuff like that. The first thing I want to do is show you what I'm going to automate. So rpachallenge.com is it's an HTTP website, which I think is one thing that causes a couple of issues later. It's freely accessible by anybody from anywhere, and you can come in. This will be the first page that shows up. So if you search RPA Challenge on Google also, so it'll be the first result. And I just want to show you that when I click into it and go to the web page, that form is what's going to show up first right here. And the idea of this web page is these fields will change as you click submit. So first name is here with the field below it now, but then if I click submit, then it's in a different place. Click submit again. If I click submit again, yeah, there. So you'll see it kind of changes positions. The text fields will change size and that kind of stuff. I am going to first build an object, maybe just one object for this, and then I'll go and build a process and call some actions from that object that I've built. So let's start by creating an object. I'm going to create a folder called RPA Challenge, and then also a process group called RPA Challenge. In the object group, let's create an object. Let's call this RPA Challenge Chrome, in case I want to do this in Firefox or whatever later on. I want to click to open. So this is something that's new in 6.9 or 6.10 is that you can open up the business object after closing the wizard. So glad they implemented that. Sorry, I'm not making fun of it, okay? It's a great feature. Let's just click finish. We'll leave the description out. So that's another thing too. In a real production automation, I would probably take the time to type out descriptions and input and output descriptions and that kind of stuff. But in this case, I don't have any benefit for doing so I won't be doing it here. And what kind of application are you using? I'm using a browser that's launched from an executable file. All right, so let's find Google. Where's Google? There, go to Chrome, application, chrome.exe, click next, and then the URL of your start page, that's gonna be http://rpachallenge.com. Next, finished. Okay. So the other thing I want to do before I forget is click OK, and I want to go into the initialize page, into the object properties, and I'm going to change in the information tab, I'm going to change the run mode to foreground so that I can run a background process later on at the same time if I need to. And then let's change, if we make any code, it's 100% going to be in C#. So let's do C#, click OK. And then let's go back into Application Modeler. We're going to spy a few things. Let's make the size of this window a little bit smaller, since that really shouldn't affect anything. And I'm going to click the element. Oh, looks like, okay, right. So this is a problem already that I see. I think this is related to this being an HTTP, like a non-secure website. So I don't know 100% that that's the case, but it seems to be. So let's just attach to this the old-fashioned way. Attach, and the window title is going to be what? RPA challenge. So RPA challenge, and I'm just going to put an asterisk, and then the process name is Chrome, and let's change the name of this stage to attach. Click OK. Going to rename this, and we'll just use this as our attach page. Let's first make sure that it works at all. Okay, so we can see it says detach there now, so that means we're attached. Let's make sure that we can actually spy something first. Hit identify. Looks like it's not working. Okay, weird. Okay, so let's restart Blue Prism. All right, so I'm not sure what's going on here, but for whatever reason, browser mode is not working for me. I will have to investigate that. But let's go ahead and save this for now. Temporarily saving in order to reopen Blue Prism. Okay, so let's close Blue Prism. Let's reopen it. Now we're back in Blue Prism. I'm going to open up the object that we just created, and let's see if we can attach to it now. Identify. Still not working. Okay, let's relaunch Chrome. Let's set next stage. Looks like this is probably not good. Oh, there it goes. Okay. All right, we are back in business. Not sure what the deal was with that. I've completely lost my train of thought now. Let's go back into Application Modeler. Now let's click Identify, and let's make sure we can get one. So I'm going to spy this whole group right here, which contains company name, label, and the text field that goes with it. And I just want to make sure that it can actually seem to interact with the web page. Great. So the next thing I want to do is create some different actions. So I know that I need attach. We always need a launch action. We always need a close action. We will probably need to fill out the form. I think we'll need to submit the form. Do we need to do anything else? Look at this web page and think. So something we could do is download Excel here, but I think maybe we'll just download it manually and leave that part out of the automation. I don't know. We'll have to think about that. But for now, I think we'll go with these actions. I am probably not going to publish the attach action, and I'll only call it from these other pages. So let's go ahead and make the attach action look like I want it to. First, we got to read. RPA challenge is connected. Store in is connected. I typed is connected and then hit this button to create it. Here, let's make sure it did that right. Yep. Okay, so is connected, and then what do I want to call this? Get is connected. One thing I could do is use this tracking ID, because that's kind of new. Let's use the tracking ID. Okay, so this is inputs though. Tracking ID. We would have needed to get the tracking ID out of the attach action already. So tracking ID would be empty. Would the launch have provided that to me? Let's see. Launch, output tracking ID. I should probably put this on the initialize page, and we'll make this global. Oh, I can't make it global till I delete the other one. Nope. Wait, there's not another one? There's not another one. Okay. So I can make this global, hide from other pages. No. Okay, let's call this launch. And the output is going to go into tracking ID. Okay, that exists already. The input, I don't think I want to provide inputs here. Hopefully it'll just take it from the application modeler. And we want to see if we are connected to that. Let's try this again. Let's detach. And I want to know if when I launch this, does it give me a tracking ID, even if it's unsuccessful in attaching? So it did. Let's see if we are attached. It's going to say no, we're not attached to it though. Let's try this. I want to get this tracking ID, paste it here. Let's see if this ends up being the same. So what happened is we tried to launch this, but it launched successfully. So I guess it got a tracking ID and output it to here. But after it did that, it didn't successfully attach. You can see it says launch up here. It didn't successfully attach to the web page. And I think that's because I think it didn't connect to the web page successfully because it's HTTP. All right, so when we use get is connected, this should take in the tracking ID. So what I want to know first is what is it going to say? Are we connected or not? It should say, no, we're not connected. Let's use a decision stage to check that first or afterward. Is connected. And then if the answer is yes, then we want to continue. If the answer is no, then we don't want to continue. Huh? Novel idea. Okay, now here's the thing. What's it gonna say to us right here? Okay, so is connected false. We still have a tracking ID. When I use attach, is it going to change the tracking ID to something else? Oh, wait. Wait, what? It doesn't output anything. What? So when you launch it, you can get a tracking ID, but when you attach, you don't get a tracking ID? Blue Prism, please. Somebody needs to look at this. What? But when you detach, you can tell it a tracking ID, of course. And then when you attach, you can neither can you provide it a tracking ID to attach to, which maybe that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't exist until you attach to it or you whatever. So maybe you have to launch it. What if it doesn't launch properly on? So I can't attach to it. I can't use tracking ID if I can't successfully attach immediately upon launch. Okay, well that answers that question. Maybe that's a bug that we need to report. I don't know. For now, we're going to have to remove the tracking ID. Pretty sick. Get is connected. We need to remove this because that doesn't exist anymore. And launch doesn't anymore output tracking ID because it can't. So let's change this to, no, nothing. This is good. So we can attach. Wait, no, we might have to type this stuff. Okay, I'm gonna hard code it. Window title, RPA, was it a space? I think there's a space, RPA challenge. And then the process is Chrome. Is that right? It was an RPA challenge, yep. And so if it's not connected already, then it'll attach and then it'll be connected. Boy, it really seems like it should output an ID there. Okay, Let's make sure launch works. So do we care about this being robust at this point? So it might make sense for it to check to make sure that the application isn't launched already. But if it'll work, even with the application launched in another window, do we really care if it is launched? I think maybe we don't. We'll launch it, then we'll attach to something. If there's two windows open, it'll attach to one of them. So who cares? Let's keep going. And then if it throws an error, we'll fix it later. So we also want to close RPA challenge. We'll just use terminate and then there's that tracking ID we can't use again. Okay, close. Actually, let's call this terminate so we know for sure that's what it means. Because we might actually want to have a close action later that uses like the X button at the top right of the window. But for now, we're just going to terminate because I don't think that's really going to cause any problems in Chrome. Terminate. You know what would be a good idea is if we check to make sure that we are attached first before we terminate. Is connected. Okay, so are we connected to something? If the answer is yes, then let's terminate. If the answer is no, then we don't terminate. Now, I don't know if that cleans up the desktop well enough. Whoops. You know, if we have some extra Chrome instances open, do we want to close them? Maybe. But I think that should be done at the end of our process rather than inside of this action, which should really only be handling one instance of Chrome. Yeah. Okay, let's publish this. Publish this. Now we have launch, we have terminate. We also have attach, which we don't want published because it's going to be called at the beginning of these other actions. So let's do that. This is something standard that I like to do. Oops. Let's bring that on the screen. Okay, click next. Let me hit attach, finish. And then I'm going to put this at the beginning of each of these pages so that whenever each of those run, it'll just kind of make sure that we're attached already before we keep going. And then here's where I think the fun part begins. Okay, let me just stop and say in UiPath, you can just basically, especially in Studio X, it's especially easy, but even in UiPath Studio, you can basically just like select a text field and then UiPath is like, okay, let me show you an example. So here, let's say this text field, like you click the text field for spying it basically, and it'll say, okay, well, can you tell us a label because it might be hard to identify this. And so you go, okay, well, here's the label. You click this label and it says, okay, we're good to go. And then you're like, all right, now the next one, and here's that label, and then the next one, and here's that one's label, and you're done as far as spying is concerned. Now, UiPath doesn't have the same kind of concept as Blue Prism does for application model. So in my opinion, it is superior in one way and inferior in another. But in this specific instance, UiPath is superior because in Blue Prism, there is, as far as I know, there is no concept of an anchor. You just have individual elements and attributes that identify them. So this is an element, this is an element, the whole thing together is an element, this whole form is an element, this whole window is an element, right? You can identify each of those individually, but you can't say, oh, this one is here and it's always below this one. You can't do that. Okay, you can do it in Surface Automation. Surface Automation 100% has that anchor concept and it works fantastic, but not when we're talking about browser mode. So we have to make it ourselves. And this is what I was proofing out earlier. So here's what I think will work is we need to spy a couple of elements on this page, probably only a couple. And then we're going to retrieve the X path or the DOM path, the web path. What else is it known as? The path. Depending on which browser you automate in Blue Prism and stuff, it's called something different. But we need the X path. The one that starts with like HTML and then it goes like div 1, div 2, div 3, that kind of stuff. All the way down to the specific element. We need to retrieve it for, let's say, this whole block, this little block that says role in company, and then it has a text field. then take that and put some text at the end of it so that the path, instead of pointing at this whole block, now points to a specific input text box inside of that block. Then, once we retrieve that for all 7 of these fields, then we can tell Blue Prism to go write data into each of those fields. And that's what we're going to do right now. It's just so silly that I have to do that. But, you know, I mean, I'm sure that the way that features come up is somebody goes and tries to do something in Blue Prism and they go, oh, I can't, this isn't easy. And then it gets brought up to Blue Prism and then they add that feature. And then we all go, oh, thank God it's here. For example, the hover action. There didn't used to be a hover action in Blue Prism, and now there is because somebody was like, oh man, we really need this. And now it's here. So, okay, let's stop jabbering and let's go make this. So let's go into Application Modeler, and I need to create an element. We are not attached again. Why are we not attached? Okay, let's go to the attached page. Is connected. Okay, attach. All right. I probably clicked detach earlier and I forgot or something. All right, let's click identify and spy this section. I think this section right here. Wait for it. Is this it? Is that what I want? I just got to make sure that I have the word role in company or the words role in company in here. Okay, there's role in company. And that should be good. So let's check match index because match index is our best friend. We also do want div because it's a division. Div stands for division, right? Seems like I should have asked that question before now. And then we don't actually want to check the XPath because we're not going to identify this by the XPath. So it doesn't matter where role in company is on the page. We want to be able to find it. So I'm going to leave the web page address selected, and I'm going to select web text for now, like that. Okay, so now we have 4 things selected. Role in company, we don't want this. Role in company, which is web text, rpachallenge.com, web page address, div, web element type, and 1, which is match index. So let's hit highlight and make sure that we can find it. Now let's just do a quick check to make sure that the other ones will work because we're going to use dynamic elements, which is my favorite. Last name, highlight. Okay, looking good. Email. Huh? Oh man, this is gonna work. Okay. I'm being totally professional. I've done all of these things before and they, I'm kidding. This is pretty exciting. Okay. Okay. So I'm lazy. I'm going to assume the rest of them work. What we want to do now though is, do we want to change this now? Let's go ahead and change this to dynamic because what we're going to, eventually what we're going to do is pass in a different word for each of these web texts because, because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to deal with it otherwise. And then let's call this like input to, yeah, let's call this input dynamic web text. That's really, it took a lot out of me to think that, okay? And then let's also create, oh, wait, am I crazy? This is not right. This is, no, it is. This is not input though. It's a div, right? Because this is the whole section, right? If I click highlight, there's a whole section. Oh, well, it's over there. Okay, good. So we want this to be div. Underneath this, let's make an element for this specific field. And we want this to be web element type input. We do not want web ID and web name because those change, unfortunately. We actually do want the web path XPath selected, but we're going to change it to dynamic. Match index. I probably don't need match index, but you know, I selected it and here we are. Let's just make sure this works. Okay. Now, here's what you want to look at. we open up, oh, let me rename this. So this is going to be input, and we are going to change this to dynamic XPath. Now, open like Notepad or something. Okay, I'm going to open this up on the page. There. All right, let's put the XPath from the outer element into here. Then the XPath from the inner element, which is like the text field. And you see that they are, that's interesting. Okay, so I feel like we're going to have to do some troubleshooting here, but I expected this to not be only one off. I expected these three to be different, right? Like I expected this top one to just look like this, but it doesn't. So that's fine. What we're going to have to do is effectively at runtime, retrieve this text right here, this path, and then append a /input1 into it, because we know that each of these groups only have one input field into them. So it's easy enough for us to retrieve the location of one of these groups, append this to the end, and then use this as dynamic input into the path for this lower one to point to specific text fields. I hope that wasn't super confusing. If it was, don't worry. I think you can probably follow along with what I'm doing, and then eventually it will make sense. Maybe. Okay. I think we're going to need one other thing, right? We need a submit button. Yeah. Let's actually drag this up into the root node so it's at the highest level. I want this to be called button submit. And this will be pretty easy. I do not want the XPath because we want it to be able to handle movement of that button. I was doing when I was actually proofing this out earlier, I found that selecting just like web value didn't work properly. So let me do match index, just check this again. Yeah, so I don't know what's going on here, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, because I don't think the web value of the element up here says submit, but like, okay, apparently a bunch of these elements up here all have web value submit, which like, okay, they may be invisible elements or something back here that I can't find. But for whatever reason, web value is not going to work. Does web text work? Okay, web text is the one that works, and web input type does not work. That one would have caused something up here to be selected as well. Okay, so just to summarize, we've got web text, web page address, web element type, and match index. Highlight, and it's kind of hard to see, but that is getting highlighted in red. Let's click OK. All right, now that we have, I think that's all we need. I could be wrong, but I think that's all we need in Application Modeler. This is as opposed to me making 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I already counted these earlier, right? 7 different elements in Application Modeler for each group, and then 7 more, 1 for each of the individual text fields. Completely unnecessary to do that in this case. We can make it more dynamic, and dynamic is fun. Remember, dynamic is fun. Okay. Let's see. We've got attach, launch, terminate, fill out form. We want to retrieve the XPath of each field. So what we will do probably is create a page. Let's add a new page and create a reference to it. Let's name this something like get all input XPaths. Finish. And that moved it to the end. Okay. And what we want to do is we are going to have data from that Excel file. So I've already downloaded the Excel file. Okay, so the Excel file I have stored locally. It's the one that I downloaded from the web page. So if you were to click download Excel, then you would get this set of data as well. 2 things to recognize if you go and try this yourself. I found 2 issues with the Excel file. I chose to manually handle them, whereas I might normally do it in Blue Prism because I don't trust the users to always remember to do this. I trust users, just I've been a user before, an end user, and I know that I make mistakes, so like I don't want to put the burden on them to fix Excel files is what I mean. So there was an extra column here. You couldn't really tell, but it was kind of like widened like this, and I could tell it used to exist, and then I deleted that. So I right-clicked like this, I deleted like that. When I pulled this into Blue Prism at first, that column got pulled in as column 1. It just automatically named it column 1 and there was no data in it. The other thing that happened, this field had a space at the end of it like that, and that breaks the automation because the way I designed it, it was expecting these exact 7 field names. So I manually deleted the space that was in at the end right there. And then the other thing actually, which we'll probably want to deal with in Blue Prism, is that I don't know if it's just this Excel or if it will always do it, sometimes, whatever. It's going to pull 999 rows from this, but there's actually only 10 rows here. So we'll want to delete the extra rows. Okay, so let's close that. So there was those 7 fields, and so I know that I'm going to need that. So let me create a collection. When they go to fill out the form, or when the automation needs to fill out the form, I'm going to expect a data collection because it should be stored in the work queue, and we'll build that later. But I know that I'm going to want a single row collection because I only want to fill out the form one at a time for each work queue item. So let's name this just data, make this a collection, and store in data. Now, in this, I don't know where that came from. That's weird. Okay, so here, let's call this, let's create 7 fields and name them first name. It's like role in company, right? Yeah. And then all these are text fields. Single row collection. I'll show you why later, because a collection that's in a work queue item is just by default, it's a single row collection. And when you make it a single row, it will always have 1 row and you never have to add any rows. So you can always just set data into it, get data from it, and always expect there's only a single row. You don't have to loop through it and that kind of stuff. So let's click OK. And this is just going to sit here and wait for input. We've already created our input here. And when we eventually call this thing, I'm going to publish it now because I do things out of order, apparently. Yeah, we need another collection. And we'll call this input X paths. And I think in this one, we'll use the same fields because basically we have data we need to put in each field. And then we also need the X path of each field. So we can just match those up. So I'm going to use the same collection basically, except renamed. Click OK. This one will be our input. Let's make that a little bit more clear. And then, matter of fact, while we're at it, let me go ahead and add some dummy data in here. This is the data that we will use to fill out the form. Dave, the RPA guy, that's my last name. Phone number 111-000-0.1001. Because like bots, binary. Okay, and then Dave at the RPA .guy. That's not a real email address. 123 RPA Street is the address. The company name is the RPA Guys, and the role in the company is Chief RPA Guy. Huh? Apparently, I think I'm clever. Initial value. Input X paths. So this is going to be empty at first. We are going to pass this collection to this page, and it's going to fill out the values for us. So let me go to that page, create an input, call it input X paths, type collection, store in input X paths. But in this case, I actually want to copy this one. Wait, let's do this. Let's copy both of these, paste, put this in here because this is now an input of this page. Okay. So fill out form, we'll call get all input X paths, give us this collection. It'll go to here. It's actually, oh wait, what's the point of us passing that in if it's going to look like this already? That actually doesn't make any sense. Whatever, it's not going to hurt anything. But just to point out, I probably could remove it as input from the start up parameter and instead have it just exist on this page to start with. But whatever. I'm thinking of it like this page is triggering everything, and so it's got all the stuff that it needs to start with. So okay, that's fine. So it'll get passed into here. That'll go into here. And then get all input X paths. I think we've already called attach We probably don't need to call attach again. The first thing we want to do is locate each field. What we want to do is loop through the fields we have. Okay, so let's use an action from the collection manipulation object. Utility collection manipulation. Get collection, get collection fields. And then let's point to the one that we just brought in. Input X paths. Output is going to go back into input X paths. No. It's going to go into another field, another collection. We'll just call the other collection fields. We'll hit that. Okay. Let's see. Did it auto create? Hey, look at that. It automatically created field name and data type. That's cool. I did not know it would do that. Okay. Let's pretend like I knew that already. All right. So now let's go ahead and test this. Okay. Get collection fields. What it should do is give us, 7 rows. Okay. So this is something I can loop through now. How is that going to work? Okay, well, I don't know yet, but let's just create a loop. We'll loop through the input X. No. We'll loop through the fields. Create a little bit of room. Okay. We're looping through this. We want the first one. So I can, I guess I can just go ahead and use a read stage directly. Get X path of div, because that's what we'll have first. This one is a dynamic, and then we want to do get some, there should be a path. Yeah, get path. And then we want to store this. Let's store this into a temporary data item. We want to take what's in that data item, concatenate it with some text, put it back in XPaths. Okay. So let's see. If I'm confusing you, I am going to show you this afterward. Build input XPath. So we are going to take the sort of the parent. So we have temp right here. All right. So we are going to take the value from temp, which by that point here, let's give ourselves something to look at. Let's reset. Are we attached? Yeah, we're still attached. Missing parameter. Oh, I'm an idiot. Okay. We need to put this parameter in. So this is a dynamic this is a dynamic element, or it's an element with a dynamic attribute, whatever. The web text needs to be taken from fields.field name. So let's say that right now we're looping through fields and we're on address, then it would get fields.field name. It would say address here. The word address would go into here, and then this element would use address for the web text, and then it would pull back the XPath, but that group and not the specific text field that's inside of it. Let's try that. So in this case, it looks like we're dealing with actually first name. So it should have given us the path to the first name sort of group or div. Yeah, so here's should be the location of that group. So right here should be the group that it contains the text field. So now what I can do is append to this /input 1. I'm not sure if 100% that this will work. We might have to fix this. Oh, right. You know what? You know what I can already tell? This doesn't look the same. Let's go look at this guy. So what I'm about to paste should match this first line, because when we originally spied this and got it out, this was the path to a group. Okay, so it doesn't match there. So I wasn't wrong before. I don't know what the reason is for that. So, you know what's happening is I'm just telling it to pull back for me the first element that matches the conditions or the attributes up here. And I'm guessing there are some invisible elements that it would come across first, but that's okay because those elements I think are still in the same place. Basically, they are still around here, or I guess in this case for first name, they're still here. so I can still use them. I think that's what's going on. In any case, instead of just adding input, I actually need to add this whole thing, RPA1 field div, and then input at the end. And we'll see, who knows if that's going to be good enough, but I'm confident that no matter what, we could come up with a solution, even if that part changed too. Let's hit evaluate expression and see what it's going to give us. So it's div RPA1 field. Right. So remember, this is the path to the group. This is the path to the group that we actually initially spied because, those two things apparently are different, but they're close enough to each other. And then this is the path to the text field itself. So we just kind of combined them together. And the part that changes is up here. Actually, technically, it's right here. That's the part that changes, this div, right in the middle, that I cannot manage to select. That's the part that changes, not the end and probably not even the beginning. But in this case, even if everything back here is unreliable and changes at runtime, changes from day to day, between refreshes of the page, whatever, none of that matters because we are dynamically retrieving the path. Okay, and then let me put in, let's store this back into temp. Oh, I've already selected the path. All right. So let's step. Okay, so what it should have done is changed that to show the RPA1 div input. Yep. Okay. Okay, so now we've got to get this into this collection field right here. So we want input xpaths.firstname. Now, how will we know which one we are working on? We know because we're working on a specific row. We know that this is the name of the field. So let's use the collection manipulation object again because it has an action in it that lets us set a specific field given a name. Set read right? Oh, there. Set collection field. I knew that the whole time. Okay. So row index is probably 0. Collection name. What's the collection name? We want input xpaths. The name of the field is going to be the one that we were working on right now. So we're looping through fields right now. Field name. Fields.field name. And then the value we want to put in there, realized I forgot this. Square bracket. Okay. The new value that we want to put in there is from temp. And then the output is going to just be input xpaths. It's just going to overwrite the collection. Now let's link this in. Okay, reset. We got some errors. Let's check out the errors. Oh, fill out form. Submit form. What is this saying? Oh, we haven't. What are we doing? We got to pass in input xpaths. Input xpaths. Are we doing outputs? We should be getting outputs from that too. Let's add an output. Input xpaths. Get the value from input xpaths. And then when I go to fill out the form, so okay, here, get all, cool. All right. So input xpaths is empty, but that will go into get all input xpaths. They're the input. Let's follow it along. It's going to go into here, which basically it's overwriting a collection that's exactly the same as itself. We use get collection fields to get the list of fields that are in this. Then we'll loop through all those fields one by one. And for each one, for example, first name and last name, we will get the xpath of the div that first name or last name or whatever is in. That result will go into temp. Then we will build the input xpath, which is like the specific field location in there, by just taking what's already in temp and then adding some extra stuff on the end of it, like this. Then we will set the collection field based upon whatever we're on. If we're on first name, then we'll set the first name field in XPaths from here. So last name, we would set temp into input XPaths.lastName, etc. Okay, and then at the end, this end stage should pass the input XPaths that we've built out back to the calling page. So it'll go out to here. Let's make sure we have that configured. Yep. And then after that, we will need to write the data into the form. You see what I'm saying? When I said it's a little bit excessive, I don't know what adjective I use for it, but it's excessive. We need a feature for anchoring. If we had an anchor feature in Blue Prism, this would be so much easier. Now, granted, I have been explaining things as I go, and that makes me take longer, but still, an hour or two is like a long time for something so simple. Okay. The next thing to do, apparently we've got a problem in here, is connected. Oh, we don't have a data item over here. We want to copy this, paste this. Stage has a blank name. Oh, I don't care about that. All right, so we've taken care of the errors. We're back over here. Let's test this. Let's just run it at normal speed for now. Okay, so it's gonna see that it's connected already, and then it's gonna go to get the XPaths. Now what it's doing is getting the collection fields. It's looping through each field. So say it's working on first name. It just got the first name. Let's say it's on last name. Now it's building the input XPath. I obviously cannot go quickly enough to explain what is going on, but basically we get the XPath of the div, then build what the specific field XPath would be inside that div, and then based upon whatever field we're working on at the time, we set the collection field in input XPaths. It's as simple as that, okay? All right, so now we would expect in this collection to have, like this, a whole bunch of inputs. What I want to do now is use a write stage. Now, just to point out, a lot of times this doesn't work in web pages, and so you have to use a navigate stage with send keys and stuff. But I usually try a write stage first to make sure it doesn't work, and then I go to other means. In this case, I can't really validate anything because when you click submit, it just like the data just goes away. So I can't really validate that it got in there, but you will see it show up on the page. So let's see, fill out form. And what we want to do is create a total of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 writes. We will take input XPaths first name. No. I'm doing that wrong. We want to actually write the data. First name, last name, phone number, email, address, company name. So role in company. So it's company name and then role in company. Drag input dynamic XPath onto every single element. And then inside of each of these, we did something wrong because I should be able to click on params. So let's click OK, go back to application modeler. Instead of this being hard coded to point directly right here, instead we want to change it to be dynamic. So change the match type to dynamic. The rest of them stay the same. Let's click OK. And then let's go back into our write stage and change each of these. Now the param field will be enabled. So I got to click this and it's going to tell us, oh, for the web path or XPath, give me an input. So let me put in my inputs. This is the input XPaths. So what are we on right now? This is first name. Click OK. Go to the next one. This is last name. Input XPaths dot last name. Phone number. Input XPaths phone number. Email. Isn't this fun? Input XPaths email. Address. Input. And I'm glad there's not like 50 of these, or I would lose my mind. Although if there were 50 of them, I think I'd maybe would try to make this even more abbreviated. I don't know. Okay. Company name. Input XPaths. Company name. I'm getting delirious. You guys please let me know if I'm putting the field into the wrong place, because like this is starting to hurt my eyes. Role in company. Okay, cool. Now we are going to fill out. Okay, right. So we have all of our data from the single row collection. Remember, right here. This is what it looks like. Each of these fields of data are going to go into their respective input text fields based upon the location of each of those text fields using this. Okay. Do I need a wait stage? I probably want a wait stage. If I didn't put a conditional wait in here, somebody would judge me for it. So I'm going to do it. Let's just use the submit button since we always know where that is. We're going to use, this is another thing that's new to 6.9 or 6.10, parent document loaded. Okay, they haven't brought back document loaded yet, but they have brought back parent document loaded. When I say brought back, I mean that in Internet Explorer automation, there were 3 options: check exists, document loaded, and parent document loaded. Parent document loaded, wait for page load. What parent document loaded does, though, is it does 2 things. It waits for the element that you're trying to wait for, as well as waits for the entire page to finish loading. I'm going to put a 10-second timeout because it should never take longer than that. I'll put an exception stage in here really quick and just put RPA challenge form failed to load properly. And what this tells me, if I'm troubleshooting this later on, is it's not telling me exactly what the problem is, why it didn't load or anything like that. I would need more robust or specific exceptions in here to know exactly what the problem is. So this is just saying, hey, it didn't load properly. I don't know what that means exactly, but you should check into it. All right, and so let's make sure that this actually works. All right, so let's test this too. If I were to navigate to like Google temporarily, then what I would expect to happen when I hit to step, it's just going to sit there and wait. And then if I navigate back, it should see it and then move forward. Cool. So that's how I test things a lot of times. I like to move over to another page, test that the wait stage works by activating it. It should wait for a period of time, and then move over to the page that you should be on where that wait stage will meet its condition, and then it'll move forward. Okay, let's, we've already worked on this. I've already talked this into the ground, so I'm not going to go back into it. I'm just going to step over, but it's going to get all the X paths. Oh, you know what we should do? Oh, okay. Let's reset this and do it again, because here's what we got to try. Let's have it verify as we go. This is exciting. Okay, let's set this to, we'll say highlight. This is going to make it take longer, but I think it's kind of cool. So let's do the same thing. I think I want it to, wait, we should verify it at the end. Let's take this out. We get an XPath, we build the XPath, we validate the XPath, then, yeah, right, because we've changed it. So we know that this works, but then when we add to the XPath, we want to make sure that works too. So we'll verify and highlight it. So let's do this, change the dynamic input to use the temp. Yeah, to use temp. Oh, we want to do, wait, isn't there like a verify? Am I blind? There it is. Okay, verify, and then we want true, which, by the way, I think this is a feature that broke. No, it caused sessions to show like a warning state or something in 6.10 or 6.9. I don't know, but that's supposedly fixed now, which means I guess we can test it. So let's see. Okay, so this is what should happen though. Let's just make sure it works for one of them. So get the collection fields, get the XPath of the first div. All right, and then let's do this. Let's highlight. Huh? Huh? That's exciting. Maybe I shouldn't be quite that excited. Why isn't it going away? It doesn't go away. I don't know. I don't think it used to do that. But here we are. Whatever. Okay, let's... maybe we like that. This isn't... Okay, it's a feature. I wanted it to do that. Let's reset and go to submit form. Get all expats? No. Fill out form. Okay. I'm just going to step over these because otherwise it would take too long. So there's the page loaded. Get all the XPath inputs. Okay. And then let's write to all the fields. Okay. That looks good. It happened really quick. Is it all right? Phone number, address, rolling company, company name, the RPA guys, Dave, the RPA guy, and okay, so it's there. I just couldn't see the whole thing. Dave, the RPA guy. And then submit form is what we want to do next. This is already attaching, so that's good. The only other thing we want to do is use a navigate stage to click. No. Click on this button. And I think we're just going to have it do like a 2-second wait at the end. So click submit. I don't normally like arbitrary waits, but I can't actually think of a good thing to watch for, because this page is just getting reloaded again. Normally you'd be able to see it go to another page or see a confirmation message or something like that, but I don't think you see anything in this case. So we'll just wait for 2 seconds arbitrarily. Submit. Yeah. Okay, so now it's reloaded. Okay, let's go to the process now. I don't know if we need anything else in the object, but let's just save it and we'll go to the process. Finished initial version of actions. All right, let's close this. Now we'll go to our RPA challenge group. Let's create a process called RPA challenge. And then open the process after closing the wizard. I'm not going to put in a description. Okay. Oh, you know what we should do actually? Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier and I played around with it. So let's use the template. Blue Prism made templates for a reason. And I did say that I wanted to try to do this like I really would for production. Now, let me just point out, I would probably, in a real scenario, use this template, the advanced scenarios template, but that one takes a lot longer to fill out because it's an advanced template. You have to do a lot more deleting of pages and configuring of your own items, data items, and control flow and stuff like that. So I'm going to just open up the basic template and we're just going to save this as RPA challenge. Put this into the RPA challenge folder. Open process after closing wizard. Okay, and so now we should only have one process open. All right. So let's do some things in here. First thing we want is a startup. So in our case, this is a situation where I probably would want to make this a little more robust, but I don't know that I care at the moment. It would be dependent upon how robust I really want this to be in production. So just recognize that while I am showing you to some degree what I would do, it might not be everything. Let's go to RPA Challenge Chrome, launch. There's no inputs or outputs. And let's replace here. The reason I chose this block instead of the one above is that I needed a retry loop. And this one has a retry loop. Let's delete these extra things. This action should throw a login system exception. We don't have any logins, so we don't have to worry about that. And I probably would normally do some kind of navigate back or whatever, but I'm not gonna because it's not that big a deal in this case. Let's delete this extra stuff. We will zoom out a little, reorganize the page a tiny bit. Uh-oh. Okay. Zoom back in. Connect this in. All right. So now this should be a functioning page already. We don't need this extra stuff, actually. Delete these, delete these. If I run into problems with this, maybe I'll come back and deal with it, but I just don't care for the purpose of this. But let me just show you, like, this is a retry loop, but you might normally do some kind of wait here, maybe close Chrome or kill Chrome, then wait for a few seconds and then try this again or something like that. But I don't think we're going to run into that problem. Now let me copy this stage, go over to close down, and I actually don't think I care about any of this either. We will add stuff like that back in if we have a problem closing Chrome, but I think that it's just going to work every time. Oh, terminate. Yep, I was looking for close. All right, so that's the close part. As far as retrying, like, I'm not that worried about it. If it fails at the end to just close the application, I don't know that I care that much. Again, in a production scenario, I wouldn't be saying something like that. I would want to always leave the virtual machine in a state that it can continue from doing another automation and not have any interference from previous ones leaving windows open and stuff. Okay, let's go into populate queue. All right, so here we need to get some data from Excel. So let's use the Excel VBO, hit the drop down, go down to, actually, you know what? We should use the new features. MS Excel. Click that. Let's do create instance. Handle. I'll just click to create that. The next thing we want is open workbook. If I know my alphabet there, open workbook. We're going to use the handle as an input. The file name, that's the full file path. So file path, I'm just going to hard code because, you know what? We should use an environment variable. We should do that. Workbook name. So while we're at it, let's go ahead and create an environment variable. Let's go over to System and Environment Variables, Add Variable, and we will name this RPA Challenge File Path, Input File Path. And this is going to be C:\test. I think I put it at challenge.xlsx. Hit apply to save it. And then let's go back into the process. We need some data items here. So we need, I already created handle. Okay, and then this I need to change to be an environment variable. Select RPA challenge input file, and boom, now we have our environment variable. Let's create the stage that's going to get collection. No. Get worksheet as collection. We'll want to put in the workbook name. The worksheet name is sick. It's sheet 1. So I'm just going to type that here, sheet 1. And then the data we want to put into, well, just put into data. Like that. Workbook name. And then the last thing we want to do is close instance. Handles an input, save changes. We want to say false. Don't want to make any changes to the original. Click OK. All right, let's do this. And then let's test this. Missing data file. All right, go into open workbook and change the file name input to actually say RPA challenge input file path, because that's the name of our environment variable right here. Originally I was thinking about doing a local variable, and then I realized I said I was going to do it like I would go to production with. Let's reset. Create instance, open workbook, get worksheet found. No worksheet was found with the name she1. This is going great. She1. All right, let's just set next stage back on this. Try it one more time. Okay, so we got 991 rows, so we already know we're going to have to do something about that. Let's move this up. Let's call the internal business object. No. We want the collection manipulation object. Remove empty rows. The input collection will be data. Output collection will also be data. And then it should remove all the empty rows for us. Oops, I hit enable calculation zoom. Set next stage. Let's step. So that should remove. So that removed all but 10 rows. And then the last thing we need to do on this page on populate queue is to populate the queue. I'm going to create a new action stage and call the work queues object. Work queues. Oh, it's right there. Add to queue. All right, so there is already a queue name. Right, there's a queue name data item already in the template, so you can just use that. I've obviously already created data. I don't care about deferring. I don't care about priority in this case. I don't need to tag it right now, but I do want to use a status of new. Item IDs, I don't need those right now. So let's add all of these to the queue. Oh, speaking of which, we need a queue. So let's go over to the system tab and to work queues. Let's change the name of Q1 to RPA challenge. We'll make the key name first name because I think those are actually unique, but typically you wouldn't want to do that. I think in a real production scenario, I would not use the first name, especially because that's an actual person's name, so that's maybe not the best idea. Probably what I do is create like a random sequence of numbers or letters or both, and then use that as the key, or maybe a date timestamp or something else that isn't like private information or PII. I know people's names, maybe first last name is not the worst thing ever, but I typically would avoid that. So just know, probably don't want to use this. I'm just using first name in this case because these aren't real people. Maximum intent's 3. That way, if we have any failures, then we can easily rerun it without having to worry about losing those queue items. They'll still get worked the next time around. I don't need to encrypt the data because there's nothing sensitive in this information, and this is not an active queue. Let's go back over to the process, reset this. Actually, I see one thing I want to change right here. I see that if this were to fail, say we create instance, open workbook, and then it fails, or it does those first two, and then we get worksheet as collection and it fails. Then it'll recover, it'll release the lock, it'll throw the exception, and the process will end. But the Excel instance will still be open. So instead of being concerned about leaving that open, let's put the release lock on the right side. Let's first close all instances. Close all instances. So this shouldn't throw an error even if there are no instances open, so it shouldn't be able to hurt anything, and it's just kind of a just in case. Another thing to mention here is that I would normally use a retry loop for this because sometimes files, especially if they're in a shared drive or something like that, the files can be not accessible for a short period of time. So having a retry loop is a good idea, but because I showed you the retry loop in the work step, or I will show it to you, I guess, and in the startup page, that shows what you kind of should do. So don't take my leaving it out of here to mean that you shouldn't do it here. However, it's possible that if you have an error at this point, maybe you want the automation to just fail right then. If you have an error right here, maybe that normally means somebody is using it and the automation is never going to succeed until somebody goes and deals with it. So by throwing an exception, sending an email out or a notification might trigger a person to know, oh, I should go unlock that file, or I should go close that file, or contact the person who has it open, or something like that. We have our populate queue. Let's test this. Let's say we are we should change this. Normally it's a good idea to methodically go through everything. I'm just trying to knock this out as quick as I can just to show as examples. I could leave this lock name the same, but I'm going to change it to RPA challenge. If you haven't dealt with environment locks before, basically what this is going to do is it's going to check to see if any other thing, any other session or process or whatever is using this lock RPA challenge with that text exactly. It will show up in the system tab under workflow environment locks right here. If you don't see any at all, that means nobody's using environment locks. And I believe that in 6.10 or maybe 6.9, 6.8, I don't know, sometime around there, they changed the functionality so these locks don't stay here after they're unlocked. So when they get unlocked, they go away. So you might look in here, see no locks whatsoever. That doesn't mean no processes are using locks when they run. It just means nobody's using a lock at that second that you look. Let's go back to the process. I've changed the lock name to RPA challenge. I'll set next stage on acquire lock, and I'm going to step over this. You see we got a lock, and if I go over here and refresh, what? Blue Prism? It's today. It is today. Today is today. I literally just locked this. 7:24 p.m. is not today. Hold on. What time is it in the UK? What time is it GMT? Yeah, same thing. It's not today. It's apparently not today because you know what? We can't seem to make this work based upon my local time zone, even though it shows the time in my local time zone. Classic. Go back in here. We see the lock now, though. We made fun of Blue Prism a little bit. Got the lock. Yes. We're going to create the instance, open the workbook, get the worksheet as collection, close the workbook, remove empty rows, and then add what's remaining to the queue. My queue not found. I'm the worst. Okay, let's change this to, what did I say? RPA challenge. Reset. And in this case, I'm pretty sure it's going to work. So let's just reset everything, start from the beginning. Okay, it launches. It's not actually connected, but that's totally fine. We will connect to it in a minute. We're going to populate the queue, acquire the lock, create the Excel instance, open the workbook, get the worksheet, close the instance, remove empty rows, add to the queue, and then now at this point, we should be able to go to the Blue Prism control room, RPA challenge, queue, and then we see 10 items in here. And the item key is the first name of each of the people right here. Let's go back to the process and keep going. So now we're going to release the lock. Let me go over and I just want to see the lock. It's not today, apparently. Okay, RPA challenge. And now if I step, then I go back into here, refresh, and now it's going to go away. You see I have everything selected, so all, but it doesn't show up here, and that's because the new functionality is that the lock goes away entirely when it's done being used. Get next item. Oh, this is where we gotta, I forgot entirely that we have more things to do. So in these work steps, we need to just choose one of these and get rid of the others. So let's delete work step 2, work step 3. We don't need them. This one's just going to be submit form, I guess. And then we'll delete these stages, call our actions that we created in that object. Wait, okay. RPA challenge, fill out form. We want to pass it the data. Now, what is the data? Well, the data is on the main page in item data because we loaded it into the queue one by one. And so all of it's in here. They have the proper names for the fields. And so we can tell this to use the item data collection, which is a global collection by default in the template. There's no outputs. Maybe there should be, but you know, here we are. And then let's change fill out form on this duplicated action to be submit form. No inputs or outputs. Connect these together. And do we have everything? So in this case, we do have a retry loop, but we don't have any navigation backwards to go like, if it failed, then probably what it should do is navigate to rpachallenge.com again, and then go back and try it again. We will add that if for some reason I start to have a lot of problems with this. And again, if I'm putting this in production, I probably would add that. And it really depends on how quickly I want to get it out to production, how stable does it need to be. Maybe this is just something I was supposed to build in a couple of hours and then deploy it for an example. Maybe it's just a pilot, whatever. Just kind of depends. Let's delete work step 2 and 3. Move submit form down. Connect it to mark item completed. At this point, let's just glance at some of the other pages. We do have mark item as completed, which is pretty standard. Set status, it's going to set to completed. Mark completed is all going to work. Reset consecutive exception indicators. All the stuff just going to work by default. That's why using the basic template is so good, especially when you first start using Blue Prism, because there's a whole bunch of effort done for you that you don't have to worry about. So I think we might be done at this point. Let's see if I've forgotten anything. I don't know. All right, let's go ahead and step into this and see if it works. Do we have this open still? Okay, let's move this to the side. I think it would work in the background anyways, but I just want to be able to see it running. So let's fill out the form for this one entry. So it should find all the fields first. You'll notice it'll always do first name first, and it'll always end with role and company. And then let's submit the form. Okay, so now it basically clicked submit and then waits 2 seconds. So that's why you saw it kind of delay. But it's just going to refresh the page. I don't suppose this data goes anywhere. It's just a fake form for practicing an RPA. So there's nothing to like validate that it went somewhere. Okay, now it's going to mark the item in the queue complete. Let me show you in the queue what's going on there. This right here is the item that we're working on. John just got entered into the page and it got submitted. And so now you know what? One thing that would be cool if we did is let's go back to this. I want to step into this. Okay, I'm going to skip over. I'm going to skip over this stuff in just a second. But the other thing I want to do is update the status. So let's use the work queues object to update the status to like submitted. So let's say that eventually we have more steps that we're going to add. It might be useful to have another status here between new and completed. All right, submitted. As a matter of fact, one idea could be that you submit all of the items and they're technically completed at that point, but you submit all the items, then you gather the information from all of them, plot them all that information into an email and send it off. If that email is successful, then it goes back and marks all of those items, all 10 of them completed at once. We're not going to do that here, I think, but that's just an idea of why it might be beneficial to mark the status. Let's see. Update status to submitted. And then let's run that one. Set next stage. Step. It should have updated this status to submitted. So it's a lot easier to see it now too, I guess. Let's go to here. Let's step. And then step over, mark item as completed. Go back over here and let's check out what it did. So it not only did it change the status to completed, but it also changed the the actual status column that indicates, its status in the queue. And so when we go to pull more queue items later, it will never pull this item again because it's only trying to pull pending items when you use get next item. Okay, reset global data. Count items. I think it's actually decrementing right here. So eventually if that gets to 0, then it'll stop. It is checking to see what time it is. So I think I just realized it's going to go up. It's going to say Should I stop? Is there a stop requested? No. Is stop after item 0? No. Local time, is it greater than stop after time? And I think it is. It is, because right now it's 7:35 p.m. and I have this stop after time set to, by default, it's set to 5:25. So let's change this to 10 p.m. And I'm actually going to have to set it in the current value too, because I don't want to have to reset the process. Okay, let's step. So this time the stop after time is now later, right, than it is currently right now. And the benefit of these is it kind of helps you to control and keep the process from running forever. If you know that it shouldn't run after a certain time, it could be that it's only allowed to run from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and another process has to run at 11 o'clock. So maybe you have it always stop by that point, and it does as much as it can in the day before the time runs out or whatever. So I'm going to let this play. It's got the next item, and it's going to go fill out the form. I probably should bring this to the foreground so we can kind of see that. I think that it'll just run without me. I could probably click around and it won't hurt anything, because all of this is using the browser mode, which typically doesn't involve moving your mouse around at all, which is actually super nice. Okay, the next thing, well, it's of course the next thing, it's going to get it the next item. And let's see, I guess we won't see who it grabbed until it puts the name into here. Albert. It submits the form, updates the status to submitted, marks the item as complete. And when it does that, it's going to set the new status to completed, mark it actually as complete. And then it has an internal sort of exceptions counter in the mark item as exception page. If you haven't looked at that very closely, it can be really useful to both help you understand Blue Prism better, but also you might want to manipulate that page more than it, to be different than it is. Because right now, Blue Prism has it as its default mode, which is to effectively retry system exceptions up to 3 or 4 times or something like that. But if you get the same system exception over and over in a row, eventually it's going to terminate the session. And you may or may not want it to do that. You might want to increase the limit or something like that. But I'm going to change the speed so that it goes faster. So you won't see Process Studio moving quite as much on the left if you see it at all, because the UI doesn't really change much when you run it at full speed in Process Studio. Something else to recognize is that full speed in Process Studio is not full speed for Blue Prism. You have to run it in Control Room before you can get the max speed that it can run at. And then as far as how fast it's running over here, this is pretty much the max speed it's going to get. So how fast it's moving around and looking at the items, personally, I think it's fairly fast, but that's about as fast as it's going to get in this case. We had a successful run in Process Studio. What do we do next? Well, we always do tests and tests and tests and tests and tests. The next thing to do once we've run it in Process Studio, though, is to test it in Control Room. So I'm going to publish to Control Room. Successful end-to-end run in debug mode. Okay, let's go over, reset this. So we have 10 completed items now. I'm going to leave these here because they're not really interfere with. Yeah, I'm going to leave these here and we'll just run it again. So here is RPA challenge. I'm going to drag it and drop it onto my runtime resource, which is local. And then I'm going to start this and it's going to pop up on the screen. And I'm not going to touch anything until it's done, hopefully. Okay, so Chrome is in the background, so I clicked to bring Chrome to the foreground. Okay. All right, looks like it's doing what it's supposed to. I think I said this already, but I can put this to the background so that Chrome, or maybe even have it minimized, and that would be totally fine. As long as you don't have any global mouse clicks like you do in active accessibility or in UI automation mode, or I guess also in Win32 mode, but if you're just using browser mode solely, then you effectively don't have to interfere with the user's clicks and whatnot. So it's doing the same thing it did before. It seems to be running a little bit faster, I think, The selection of the individual fields look about the same to me though, as far as comparing it to running in Process Studio. So a little bit more about that. If you find that your automation is running slow, even in Process Studio, the very first thing that you should check is the stage logging in your process and in your objects, but specifically your process. Any places where you have a loop, where it's going to be looping a whole bunch of times, you need to check and make sure you've turned the stage logging either to disabled or to errors only. And if you can minimize the amount of logging, I guarantee you your process will speed up so much, because it is logging that's one of the biggest reasons that processes go slow. It could also be that it just takes a while for Blue Prism to find an element on the page or something like that. But for the most part, if you have done good development practices, then you're, or I mean, and barring that an application might just be really slow to interact with, that happens sometimes. But barring those kinds of things, it's the stage logging to be concerned about. All right, so we had a successful run. We can go check the queue, and it looks like we have another run. So you can distinguish what we did before from what we did just now by the resource. So when it says the name of my machine underscore debug, that's when we had Process Studio open. And then the name of the resource is actually different when you run it from control room. So it's just the name of the machine. So these are the ones that we just now ran, and that's exciting. So at this point, I don't really have anything else to show you. There's more you might add to the process, things like notifications and improving the robustness, the exception handling, the retrying for opening applications or for keeping an application open, or maybe even adjusting it so that it doesn't close Chrome entirely when it has a problem, that tries to navigate first back to rpachallenge.com. And then if it can't do that, then close Chrome, but kind of a tiered approach to exception handling. But honestly, I think we've gone a little overboard today anyways. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. I'm sorry that this was such a long video, but I didn't really see any other way to do this. And probably in the future, I won't be splitting videos up into parts. That just didn't work really well last time. So I think when I come up with something like this and I want to just show everything I did, I'm going to put the entire video on YouTube all as one piece. And then if only 1 or 2 people watch it, that's totally fine. If somebody gets use out of this, I think it'd be great. This has been good practice for me. And if you found this useful, please let me know in the comments. Give me a like and subscribe, because that's what I'm supposed to say when I post stuff on YouTube, I think. Anyway, thanks so much for being here and joining me today. I will see you in the next video.